Hi everyone, welcome to grammar class. So every morning I take the 9:10 bus from Taipei, and that bus is often late, sometimes very late by 30 minutes. Thankfully today it was only late by 5 minutes, so I was a little bit late getting in through the door. But in the future, class will begin whenever I get here. Okay, so grammar. Let's take a look at what we're doing in this class. So I'm looking at the syllabus. Everything you'll need is on the Moodle page. Okay, my email, don't abuse it. Time and place, you know the time, you know the place, otherwise you're not here. The textbooks, I have prepared these. These are also all on Moodle. Our main textbook will be Andrew Rossiter's A New English Grammar American Edition. I think it uses the clearest way to explain grammar. It not only are the explanations clear, it's also color coded to help you see the important concepts. The main drawback or there are two main drawbacks to this text. First, it's the American edition, but the author is British. So there are one or two places that are kind of weird from an American standpoint. But that's very minor. You don't have to worry about that. The other main drawback is that there are many typos. There are small details that are not spelled right. I've tried to correct as many as I could find, but if something looks weird, you can double check. Other than that, it's a great textbook, but it doesn't have practice questions. So most of the other stuff, right? It says handouts taken from blah, 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 and blah. These are all practice questions. Um, Grading, 40% midterm, 40% final, and 20% course reflections. So, you should try not to fail the midterm or the final, which is easier said than done. Office hours, you can see the student information system. My schedule is on there. Course description. This 16-week required course to be taught in English, 但是会用中文辅佐, will cover English grammar from the perspective of parts of speech. So we're going from verbs, nouns, adjectives, and then we're working our way up to the level of the sentence. Next semester, the grammar course is called Sentence Structures of English. We will be working from the level of the sentence. And then if we have to, we'll talk about the smaller parts, but then we're going to keep going up to the level of style, which is a bit more subjective. Each week will comprise a lecture and interactive in-class practice doing error correction questions. So each week I will stand here and introduce a new concept or series of concepts. And then the handouts are 99% practice questions. And almost every question is an error correction question, which means the question gives you a sentence that has a mistake. You have to find the mistake and correct it. This is to prepare you for the exams. I'll show you an example later, but the exams are also error corrections. I will give you a paragraph with 10 mistakes, and you have to find the mistakes and correct them. So after I introduce the concepts, the rest of class will be practicing these questions. Points will be awarded for successful answers when called on. So I will say, okay, now let's do this page, and I'll give you like 10 minutes. And then I will start calling people to answer each question. If you get it wrong, don't worry. We're going to talk about why that's not correct and what is the correct answer. If you get it right, you get points. Yes, and then as I said, the exams will be the same question format, but larger in scope. Okay, let's look at the schedule. I really don't like teaching grammar on Fridays. First of all, it's a Friday, but also because Fridays are the busiest day of the week at our department. So if you look at the schedule, today we're doing introduction and independent clauses. Then we're going to spend 3 weeks on verbs. There's a holiday, a fourth week on verbs, another holiday, a fifth week on verbs. Then we're doing the midterm exam, paper and pen in class. Week 10, we're going to review the midterm and then start talking about nouns. Week 11, there's a field trip. So if you're a freshman, you may not know this yet, but before you graduate, you have to do a graduation thesis project, 毕业专题. Part of that is you have to present your results in public. That's this thing. Now, you're freshmen, you don't have to do this, but I have senior students who have to do this, so I have to be there, so you have to be there. So that's week 11. I'll tell you more when the details become available. Another 2 weeks on nouns. Week 14 is on adjectives, adverbs, and numbers. Week 15 is on preposition and mechanics. Mechanics here means punctuation and typing. And then week 16 is another in-class final exam. Okay, questions about the syllabus? Great. So, what else do we have here? Course plan. This is the official student information system document that nobody really reads. Class emails. If there's something important that I forget to tell you and you have to know, I will post it here and Moodle will send you an email. Lecture recordings. As you can see, I am recording this and I will post these on YouTube. Here's the link to the playlist. The reason I do that is because YouTube will then will automatically generate a transcript, 逐字稿, and you can search it. You can open the transcript, Control F, look for a keyword, and then if you click on that line, it will jump to that place in the video. So it's a much faster way of reviewing if you want to watch the recording. And so the next link shows you how to do that. Okay, so I was talking about what the exam will be. Here is an example. Okay, in the paragraph below, each line has one grammatical error. Circle each error, 2 points each. The point numbers may be off, but the format is the same. Circle each error and correct it in the answer space below. No partial credit. So if you only correct it halfway, you don't get points. It has to be absolutely correct. The maximum score is 40. You can ask the instructor about vocabulary. This is a grammar class, not a vocabulary class. So if there's a word you don't know, you can ask. And I suggest you use pencil because you're going to be correcting a lot of stuff. So here's the paragraph, 10 lines. Each line has one mistake. And then here's where you're supposed to make your corrections. So up here, circle the part that's wrong. Down here, write down the correct version. Easy, right? Let's do this one together. Line 1. Remember, there's one mistake. Okay, the text is kind of old, but Joe Alwyn appear Wednesday evening at the British GQ Men of the Year Awards at London's Royal Opera House. Where's the mistake? Good. It should be appeared, past tense, because this is something that happened in the past. Line 2. The first public sighting of the actor former known as Taylor Swift's long-term boyfriend. Where's the mistake? Good. Here, formerly. You want the adverb, not the adjective. Line 3. Since Swift went public with his relationship with professional football player Travis Kelce this fall. Mistake? Good. Taylor Swift is, so far as we know, a woman. Her relationship. Line 4. Alwyn, who was romantically linked to Swift from 2016 to 2022, did not appear. Good. Uh, Here, linked. You need the passive voice, right? Be linked. Did not appear to have participated in any interviews, unsurprising given his reputation for playing things close to the vest. Ah, good. Someone found it. It should be a comma and then a space. Right? One of our units is punctuation. If you didn't catch that, that would cost you 4 points. This was only the second time Alwyn had been spotted since he and Swift ended their relationships. Good. The name should be capitalized. Line 7, relationships. Under the pseudonym William Bowery, Alwyn co-wrote several tracks with Swift. Ah, good guess, but no, not the quotation marks. No, but you're starting to see how I think. Good. Someone see it? Nope, nope, nope. I said each line, not each sentence. How many relationships are they in? Line 8. On her Folklore and Evermore albums, earning him coveted Grammy winner status if Folklore won Album of the Year in 2021. Okay, this one would be easier if you knew anything about the Grammys and the Folklore album. When Folklore did win, right? This is uh, to 2022. The album won in 2021. This is a known fact. Okay, continuing. As at Swift, she has 12 Grammy wins and is the only female solo artist. Okay, someone found the mistake. It shouldn't be at. What should this be? Not with. For. Good. As for, which in Chinese is 自于. Right now we're talking about something else. As for Swift, to having won Album of the Year 3 times. Not to. Good. To have won. After to, you should add the original form of the verb, what we call the infinitive. So if you caught all the mistakes, congrats to you. You're going to do great in this class. Everyone else, now you know what you're facing. Okay, so we only have 2 hours a week, and we're not even going to do a full 16 weeks because of all the holidays. So if you need extra guidance or practice, I found this really cool thing on ChatGPT. So as you may know, OpenAI has a thing where you can customize and design your own AI program based on ChatGPT. Someone in Japan designed a program to explain English sentence and grammar structure. So if you ever have a question about like what's going on in this sentence or this fragment, or if you want to ask it like, where's the mistake? Why is it a mistake? You can log into ChatGPT. I'm sure you all have a free account, uh, and open this program. The one thing you have to pay attention to is it was written by a Japanese dude, so its default output is Japanese. The first thing you should do is tell the program to output in a different language. Okay, so that's all the information, or almost all the information related to grammar. There's one last thing here. Um, so over the past couple of years, I have been posting like English learning tips on our department Facebook page in Chinese. And I have collected what I think are the best hits in this PDF. So if you're struggling with some aspect of learning English, you can take a look to see if I have any guidance for you here. Okay, and then so the handouts are pulled from, as you saw earlier, many different books. I have provided you with all of those books here if you want extra practice, but they don't have answers. So if you do some practice questions and you're not sure if you got it right, you can bring your answers to me and we will talk about them together. So the first one is the textbook I was talking about earlier. The next three are practice questions. And well, some of them are textbooks. This one is the textbook. If it says workbook, it's practice questions. This book is a writing guide. We're going to be using this one more next semester, but if you're interested, you can read it now. It's talking about common writing mistakes and how to improve your writing. It is also a very big file size. So be warned if you want to download it on your phone. This one is also more practice questions. This one is a textbook. And this one is an essay collection. This guy is writing essays about why grammar is important for daily life. And it's quite fun. It's kind of philosophical, talking about how like semicolons remind you of death and things like that. It is an EPUB file, so to open it, you will need an e-reader program such as the Amazon Kindle app, or other programs if you have an ethical objection to Amazon. Okay, and then the handouts. I have posted the full handouts on Moodle, but I will also give you a paper copy later today because they are practice questions. I'm sure you will appreciate being able to physically write your answers. Each week, as I said, we will do practice in class, and then you will do the rest for homework, but um, I will give you the answers so that you can compare for yourself. And at the beginning of the following week, if you have any items you don't understand, you can bring them up in class and we will talk about them together. Now, obviously, I can't give you these answers now because if I call on you to give an answer, that's worth some points. But I will give them to you after class, one by one. So that's the first half. This is for the midterm exam. Here's the second half, same thing. Okay, and then it will be paper and pencil or paper and pen exams, but I will input your grade into Moodle, and this is where I will input them. I have also uploaded the exams to Moodle, but I am not letting you access them just to tease you. Finally, the 20% course reflections are here. You will only be able to write them after the end of the final exam. Sorry, I should have showed you the deadline. There we go. Okay, yeah. So December 26th is the day of the final exam. Class ends at 12. That's when you can begin writing this. Now, this type of item on Moodle. In the past, when I give you a grade and some comments, Moodle would not tell you. However, this semester we have a new version of Moodle, and I was playing around with the notifications, and I found this lesson essay graded notification, and you can turn this on. And in Chinese, it looks like this. 学习单元的问答题已经计分的通知. So it looks like if you turn this on, and I give you a grade on those course reflections, Moodle will tell you, I guess. I don't know. We're going to find out together. How exciting. Yeah, so for now, the standard warning still applies, right? Don't expect to get notification. You're going to have to log on and check for yourself. You can access your grades here. It'll give you a table of, I'll show you. It'll give you a table, right? Midterm, final, course reflections, etc. Your total grade will be a simple sum. So just add everything together. That will be your final, your total grade. Finally, we have this thing, extra credit. Over the past few years that I've been teaching this course, students have repeatedly unsuccessfully avoided failing the course. So I've now offered some extra credit in case you find yourself in that unfortunate situation. If you do this successfully and your original grade is failing, I will pass you. If your original grade is passing, I will give you somewhere between 3 and 7 extra points. Now, for such a good deal, there must be a catch, right? And the catch is that this is not easy to do. There's also a word count. At least 1,000 meaningful words, or whatever language you use. If I put it into Google Translate, it has to come out as 1,000 English words. So since there's a word count, I have to warn you about this. What's wrong with this picture? How many words are highlighted? 2, right? But it says 5. It is counting each letter as a word. So if this happens to you, and you look at the word count, you say, okay, 1,000 words, I've got it. And you submit, and I notice this problem, and I check the actual word count, it'll come out to around 200 words. Absolutely not enough. So apparently this can happen if you write in Google Docs and then save as a Microsoft Word file. So don't do that. If you do use Google Docs, please copy the whole thing and then paste it into Microsoft Word. And if you realize that you have found yourself in this situation, so the word count is wrong, and you see like words breaking in half randomly like this, the only solution I have found is very annoying. You have to copy the whole thing, open up something that is not Microsoft Word, not Google Docs, paste it there, open up a new Microsoft Word document, copy from the new place, paste it into a new Microsoft Word document. So the best thing to do is avoid the problem in the first place. And then because it has to do with writing, so here is a Chinese article explaining why you should not plagiarize, why you should not copy. Okay, so that's everything on Moodle. Questions? Yes. How do I define 1,000 meaningful words, right? Well, here's the thing. Try to be as meaningful as possible. It's not that technical. The idea is don't spew bullshit. Okay? Yes. Okay. Do you mean my talking or every week? Okay. I will slow down. Okay. Okay. No, thank you. I will slow down. Thank you. Sure. Thank you. Yes. Other questions? Yes. Midterm and final are in-class pen and paper exams. Oh, the you mean the Microsoft Teams? Yeah, you can log into Microsoft Teams. Uh, you have to download the app yourself, but MCU has provided you with an account. Yeah, yeah. It's free? Yes. MCU has provided you with a free account. Yeah, sure. Other questions? Microsoft Teams is it's available on the Google App Store or iPhone's App Store. Yeah. Anything else? I will provide you with handouts. Sorry. Oh, just for the extra credit. 只有加分作业会看. Yeah, sure, sure. Other questions? Okay, so this is supposed to be a freshman course. Everyone, if you are a freshman and you look around and you see people who are not freshmen, either they are new to our department or they failed grammar before. So for the freshmen, I'm going to do a quick reminder of some things to remember to be like a good student in the English department. The first very important idea, English is a living language. It changes fast. When you learn history, it also changes, but slowly. You have enough time to grab the information and to remember it and to acquire historical knowledge. But English moves quickly. Some things that I say may not apply to the most recent uses of English, especially prepositions, 介系词. Prepositions change, I think, the fastest in English. So the truly best way to learn English is observation. And this applies to grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. So these examples are all examples that don't fit the usual rules, but they are correct. So the grammar example, James didn't gift Dylan an invite because she wanted them to come. She was simply being polite. If you use the usual way that we teach grammar to read this sentence, it doesn't make sense. Right? I already hear somebody saying, wait, this should be he. What if James is a woman? So in this case, in the real world, this sentence would be talking about these two people. You would know whether they are a man or a woman. So it's possible that James could be a woman. While we're talking about pronouns, them in this sentence refers to Dylan, who I guess in this case uh, does not prefer to be referred to as a man or a woman. English gives you the option of a third pronoun, singular them. Them looks plural, but if you're using it in a gender neutral sense, neither man nor woman, it can also be singular. And this goes back to Shakespeare. Then we have some fun things to do with verbs and nouns. Gift. That should be a noun, right? But in this sentence, it's being used as a verb. To give as a gift. Same thing for invite. If you read it as invite, it's a verb. But if you read it as invite, it becomes a noun. It's a less formal way of saying invitation. Today, if you say invitation, people think of like a card and somebody in a suit giving it to you. If you're just inviting somebody, people today say invite. There's one last thing that may feel confusing for you. James didn't give Dylan an invite because she wanted them to come. She was simply being polite. So this not is not talking about whether James did give Dylan the invitation. It's talking about why James gave the invitation. In this sentence, the fact that James invited Dylan is a fact. Nobody is disputing this. We are discussing why James did this. It's not because of this, it's because of that. So this sentence breaks at least 5 grammar rules traditionally as you learn them, but it is correct depending on the context and depending on how language has changed. Even in the following few weeks, sometimes I will say this is the expected answer, but if the situation is like that, then the other thing could also be a correct answer. We are used to thinking of grammar as being correct or incorrect. Today, I want to tell you, grammar doesn't just reflect the world. Grammar creates the world. Depending on how you create your sentence, how you choose your words, each sentence describes a different world. Same for vocabulary. If you know this poem, please pretend like you don't know this poem. But this is taken from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, which is, I believe, the first volume of Alice in Wonderland. 爱丽丝梦游仙境. So if you know the story, you know Alice goes into a weird fantasy place where things don't make sense. And here a character is talking about the Jabberwock. The Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. So there are a few words here that aren't real words, but somehow we can still kind of understand what's happening. For example, the tulgey wood. We know that wood here means forest. So what kind of forest could be described as a tulgey forest? a dense one, maybe a dark one, maybe it's overgrown with wild trees and vines and plants. The word togi is not a real word, and yet when we read this, we get a sense of what it's trying to say. What about whiffling? This looks like a kind of motion, right? What kind of motion could this be? Somebody saying like a wind. So maybe it's creating noise, maybe it's moving fast. And the other nonsense verb, and burbled as it came. What kind of action could burble be? To me, it seems like something that the Jabberwock would, it's a sound that it might make, right? It might come from its voice. It might be making some kind of noise. It seems like a low and bubbling, growling kind of noise to me. So even though these words don't actually mean anything, they still give us a sense of meaning. And this is for two reasons. One, linguists have discovered that words that sound higher or sound lower convey different feelings across all or almost all human languages. So when I asked you about the Togi forest, nobody said, oh, a light and airy forest full of happiness and breezes and birds and bees, because it sounds like a lower, the sound of the word is lower in pitch. The second reason is because in this class, we're studying nouns, verbs, and adjectives, but language actually conveys meaning through the sentence. This is why in our first example, nouns can become verbs, verbs can become nouns, because of where the word is in the sentence. So in the second example, even if I just took away all the nonsense words and left a blank, you could still guess what kind of meaning should be in that space. And finally, for pronunciation. Okay, look, usually I would read this, but I am not African American, and I have seen some people in the class who might feel offended if I actually do read this. Um, but the idea is it looks strange when you see it on the page or on the screen, but if you hear somebody read it, it will make sense. No, no. Um, and it's because this kind of spelling is representing the sound of the speaker's actual words, not just the words themselves. I'll translate this into so-called standard American English. This person is saying, Lord of mercy, honey, I sure am glad to see my child. So you can see what the sounds are supposed to be like. And that is something, if you encounter this as you are reading, like a novel, I teach literature, um, then you'll know that this is also based on observation. For these kinds of language use, you have to use your ears, not just your eyes. So the best way to learn a language is observation, especially for English, because English does not have a central authority. If you learn French, the correct French is defined by the Académie Française, the French Academy. If you learn Chinese, the correct Chinese in Taiwan is defined by the Ministry of Education. If you learn English, nobody defines the correct English. The correct English is whatever native speakers feel like is correct, which means that learning correct English is a moving target. It's always changing. So the best way to learn this is observation. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait, isn't there something called the Oxford English Dictionary? 牛津英文字典. It's like what, 20 volumes, collects every single meaning that we have discovered so far? Yes, there is, but it doesn't tell you what is correct today. It tells you what has been correct in the past. It is a historical dictionary, and it is always being updated. They used to publish paper books. Now it's all online because language changes too fast. In English and in Japanese, dictionaries are made by collecting how native speakers use the language and then trying to figure out what the meaning is. It is not created by experts sitting down, pointing to words and say, this means that. The ultimate authority on what is correct English is according to native speakers. Thankfully for you, I am a native speaker, so whatever I say is correct. Okay, now in high school, you took a series of standardized and centralized classes with unified exams. In college, each course is taught by a different person. Even different sections of the same course taught by different people will have different sets of rules. So, for example, freshman, you are now taking paragraph writing or something. You're taking a writing course. In your sophomore year, you will be taking another set of writing courses taught by someone else. If your freshman writing teacher says this is correct, but your sophomore writing teacher says this is incorrect, what should you do? You should listen to whoever's course you're taking. And so now you're thinking, but wait, so which one is actually correct? Let's think about this. After you leave college, when might you need to do English writing? Maybe for your personal benefit. In that case, you can decide what you want to say. Maybe you're writing in English for your job. And in that case, you will have some kind of boss or manager or editor, and they will say what is correct. So even after you leave college, the correct answer depends on who's calling the shots, who is the person who makes the decisions. So this is a good thing to practice in college when if you do get into a debate with a teacher, the worst that could happen is you lose some credits. You won't get fired from your job. Now, because each course has its own set of rules, if you feel lost or confused, you're not sure why you're taking a course, but you have to take the course anyway, try to figure out what you can learn from this course. So the first question to think about is, what is the course trying to teach you? Where can I find that information? And if I'm not learning what I should be learning from this course, how can I find a way to learn by myself? Now, in college, people get really busy. Even with coursework, it's a lot more work, but a lot of you also have jobs. And as your parents grow older, you might have family obligations. So when you have to balance your time, sometimes coursework, schoolwork, may not be your first priority. In that case, you should figure out how much time and energy do you need to spend on this course to pass? What is the least you have to do? And then you have to make sure to look at the instructions and requirements very carefully to not make a mistake if you are trying to do the bare minimum. And then at the end of the course, don't wait for the student information system to calculate your final grade. You can calculate it yourself to see if you did pass or if you need to send an email begging the teacher to let you pass. Especially here at Mingchuan, our information system is very rigid, very inflexible. If there's a deadline and you miss the deadline, you're fucked. So please be careful to make sure that um, you do know where you are in the course. You do know what you have to do next, and please do not miss deadlines. I mean, you're not actually like you're not going to get kicked out of the school, but it's going to create a lot of problems for many different people trying to help you. So try not to do that. Um, so I'll move through this more quickly. In college, you don't have to ask the teacher if you can use the restroom. We understand humans have needs. When you contact your professor or in the future your work boss, instead of just talking about yourself, try also to think about uh, your teacher or boss's situation, what kind of time pressure they are under. Maybe they don't have time to read emails. You might have to go find them. Maybe you have their line, but they aren't responding. You should make sure to try every way to contact them if it is very important. For me, I will reply to your email within 24 hours. If I don't, I did not see it. Contact me another way. And then finally, different courses will have different requirements related to AI. Um, in this course, you cannot use AI during the exams, obviously. And if you use AI elsewhere, you must be very careful because ChatGPT knows basic grammar, but advanced grammar, it starts to get confused. The basic rule of thumb is if you use AI, please double check. Right, so here is the data for GPT-4. Its accuracy across different expert areas. The light green is GPT-4's accuracy rate. The highest is just above 80%. The lowest is just below 70%, which means in the best case, every time you ask it a question, there is a 20% chance it will be wrong. And you don't know which 20%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking. So if you use AI, you must double check. Um, yeah, you can read this on your own time. This file is on Moodle. And here's a poem, because again, I do teach literature. So I'll let you read this while we take a short break.
就是刚刚在讲那个叫什么访问，跟会前几年我刚刚想问一个问题，这个是口音或腔调的感觉吗？
对，他这个人，这个小说里面这个角色在讲方言。 Today we're talking about the most important concept in English grammar, the independent clause. In plain English, that just means the complete sentence. How can you tell if a sentence is complete? Every complete English sentence follows this basic structure. You might have seen something like this before. Every complete English sentence has one subject, has one main verb, and depending on the verb, it could have an object. And then there's everything else. Everything else that is not the subject, not the verb, not the object. So this would be time, place, location, reason, condition, um, order, tool, acquaintance, logical accompaniment. Anything that is not one of these three things in the typical English sentence goes in the back. For example, um, I taught grammar to some English majors today. The subject is I, the verb is taught, the object is grammar. This is everything else. So who did I teach it to and when did I do it? These typically come after the three main items. However, sometimes you want to emphasize some of those later items. If you decide to move something to the front, please add a comma and a space to let your reader know that something has been moved. So, for example, and this is why I like to use the computer and not the whiteboard. If you want to emphasize today, you can put that at the front. Make sure to add that comma and that space. This is the typical structure of every English sentence. So if you read something and you seem to run into the second subject, that tells you you need to begin a new sentence. There are a few ways that English uses to connect to independent clauses, to complete sentences. You can, of course, just leave them as two sentences. That's perfectly fine. You can also use a semicolon, 分号. The semicolon is cheating because it tells the reader that these two complete sentences are connected, but it does not tell the reader why. If you use a semicolon, you are letting the reader figure out what is the connection for themselves. If you want to be more polite, you can use a coordinating conjunction. We will talk about these next semester, I believe. English has 7 coordinating conjunctions. But you're not going to use the 7th one in any frequency, nor is kind of weird. But depending on the relationship between these two sentences, if they are going in the same direction, use and. If you have to choose one or the other, use or. If they are going in opposite directions, they're saying different things, use but or yet. If the first one is the cause and the second one is the reason, use so. If the first one is a reason and the second one is the cause, sorry. If the first one is the cause and the second one is the result, use so. If the first one is the result and the second one is the cause, use for. And then there are a few other more tricky ways you can combine sentences. Um, but the concept I wanted to leave with you is you cannot do this. This is absolutely wrong. In English, you cannot connect two independent clauses with one comma. You must at least add one of these words, or you have to do something more fancy, or you have to keep the two sentences separate. If you can understand this concept and you can apply it consistently throughout your reading and writing, that will already handle around 30% of your English grammar needs. So moving things around, the first sentence was a bit too simple. We can move some more things around. Let's see. I had lunch with my boss yesterday at 1 p.m. In a, sorry, at a fancy restaurant with no spoons, just for fun. So the structure of this sentence, I is the subject, had lunch is we call this the verb phrase. So the main verb is, sorry, have is the main verb, lunch is the object, and then this is everything else, right? So subject, verb, object, everything else. With the person, time, or sorry, day, time, place, and condition. So according to this rule, you can move a lot of this stuff to the front. If you really wanted to do something special, you can actually move everything to the front. You probably don't want to do this every day, but this sentence is grammatically correct. One reason you might want to write it this way is you want to create suspense, 悬疑感. You tell the reader first, oh, it's with your boss. It was yesterday at 1 p.m. It was a fancy restaurant. They didn't even have spoons. What did you do there? You had lunch. But you can then move any of these elements to the front. You can move yesterday. You can move at 1 p.m. and keep yesterday in the back if you want to. Let's do another fancy one. Or let's start with no spoons. This is also a grammatically correct sentence. With no spoons. I had lunch with my boss yesterday at 1 p.m. at a fancy restaurant. But the meaning of these two sentences is slightly different. In the first sentence, with no spoons is describing the restaurant. The restaurant does not provide spoons. But in the second sentence, with no spoons is describing how you had lunch with your boss. So in the second sentence, the restaurant does offer spoons. You just declined to use them. for some strange reason. I now imagine you eating soup with a fork. And that's a good example of how grammar describes different situations. It creates different situations. Okay, so that is for the introduction. That is the concept for today. Do you have questions? Okay, let's turn to our handout. Please turn to page 2. So these 4 questions are all about this concept. Number 1 is the example. Right? So if you begin reading number 1, there are over 100,000 kinds of flies. They live throughout the world. When you get to they, you realize, wait, that's another subject. This is the beginning of another sentence. And you would correct this mistake in one of several ways. For this set of questions, it only lets you add periods and capital letters. So the correction would be to add a period and a capital T. The next 4 questions are similar. I will give you 1 minute, and then I will call on somebody to answer. Poison. Question 2, where's the mistake? I'm asking her. Do you have a handout? Yeah. Okay. So question 2, where's the mistake? Good. It's here. Here. So how should this be corrected? How do we fix the mistake? So this is the end of the first sentence, right? And this is the beginning of the second sentence. So here we should add a period and make it a capital I, right? Okay. Question 3. 林品言. Lin Pinyan. Oh, yes. Question 3. Where's the mistake? Is this part correct? Good. This is the end of the first sentence, right? So we begins the next sentence. It should be a period and a capital W. I'll give you one more chance. There's another mistake in this sentence. Good. Here, other, period, capital W, right? Okay, good. Question 4. 傅鼎宏. Fu Dinghong. Yeah. Question 4, where's the mistake? Good. Here, this is the end of the first sentence, right? So how do we fix this problem? Okay, capital T, what else? Good. Period, capital T. There's another mistake. Good. Here. Same problem? And the same fix, right? Good. So this question only lets you use periods in capital letters, but I would add a comma here as well, because luck is not a subject, object, or verb. And question 5. Facundo. Good. Period, capital T here. Hang on. Yes. Good. So we have 4 sentences here, not just one. Great. So uh, do you have questions about these 4? Okay, yeah, that's how this class will go. Next week, we're going to begin talking about verbs. That's it for today. You can leave. Please make sure to hang on to your handouts. I'm going to have to ask if the Japanese and Vietnamese students could come see me, please. Not you, Tony. Everyone else, see you next week.